Okay, let's unpack this one. We're diving into a topic that, well, it feels like it's really shaking the foundations of something pretty fundamental. College, how we
Oh,
learn.
right. Feels big.
It does. We've got a really interesting stack of sources here. There's a deep dive by James D. Walsh, some really thought-provoking ideas on how educators might maybe navigate this whole new landscape.
Hmm.
Our mission today really is to cut through the noise, get to the core insights from these sources, and try to understand what's really going on with AI in academia. The challenges and maybe, just maybe, how we can start thinking about it differently.
And these sources, they paint a pretty stark picture, don't they? Right from the get-go. A lot of focus on academic integrity, obviously, but also the impact on learning itself.
Exactly. And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. The sheer scale of AI use.
Hmm.
According to these reports, it's already massive. It's not creeping in. It's like everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's forcing everyone to ask these huge questions about what learning even means now.
Well, that scale is really the first thing that jumps out, isn't it? We're not talking about just a few curious students tinkering.
No.
There was a survey, January 2023, and remember, this is just a couple of months after ChatGPT really blew up.
Right. Still very early days.
Very early. It found nearly 90%.
Mm.
And 90% of 1,000 college students they asked had already used ChatGPT for homework.
90%. In what, 2 months?
Yeah.
That stat alone tells you this isn't some niche thing students are trying out. It's instantly widespread.
Instantly. Absolutely. And the ways they're using it.
Mm-hmm.
It's way beyond just asking it to write a whole essay. Although, that definitely happens too.
I'm sure.
Students are using AI for, well, everything.
Yeah.
Summarizing dense articles, brainstorming ideas, outlining papers, drafting chunks of text, even automating some research tasks, analyzing data, getting through coding assignments.
Mm.
There was this one student's caption on a video, it's cited in the source, just kind of nails it. College is just how well I can use ChatGPT at this point.
Huh. That's quite a statement. And all that usage, it must create massive headaches for professors, right? Trying to figure out if the work they're getting is actually the students.
Oh, absolutely. The source mentions that educators often feel they can spot it. Maybe the writing's too smooth, almost unnaturally so. Or sometimes it's the opposite, kind of clumsy.
Okay.
Or the arguments feel a bit too balanced, maybe to both sides. You might see certain words pop up again and again, like multifaceted or context.
Oh.
Those seem to be giveaways sometimes.
Right, this buzzword.
Yeah. And then there's that classic story. The teacher got an essay that literally started, "As an AI, I have been programmed."
Chuckle slightly. Okay, that was maybe a bit too easy.
That was almost funny, yeah. But the reality is usually way more subtle. And teachers have tried getting clever, these little Trojan horses hidden in the assignment prompts.
No, yeah. Like what?
Like telling students they need to include a weird word like broccoli, or specific phrases like mention Finland or mention Dua Lipa.
No way. Seriously.
Yeah, sometimes buried deep in a long prompt or in tiny text, hoping a student who just dumps the whole thing into an AI and copies the output won't even notice.
And did it work? Did students fall for it?
The source says some did, yeah. They turned in papers with these crazy things just sitting there, apparently having not read their own work closely.
Wow.
But, that's anecdotal. The bigger picture. Detecting AI reliably is incredibly difficult, maybe even impossible consistently.
Really?
Yeah, multiple studies are confirming this. One specifically looked at professors, actual professors, trying to spot it, and found they failed to flag 97% of work that was 100% AI generated.
97%. They missed almost all of it.
Almost all of it. Think about that. These are the experts, supposedly.
Sure.
And the automated tools, the AI detectors, they're riddled with problems, too.
Like what kind of problems?
Well, they give conflicting results. They sometimes flag writing by neurodivergent students or non-native English speakers as AI when it's totally not.
Yeah.
False positives.
Oh, that's not good.
Not good at all. And get this example from the source. A reporter fed a big chunk of the book of Genesis into one of the popular free detectors.
Okay.
It came back flagged as over 93% likely AI generated.
The book of Genesis as AI. Okay, yeah. That really highlights how broken detection is right now.
Exactly. It feels like you're trying to, build a sandcastle against the tide. And students aren't just sitting back. They're actively working out how to beat these systems.
How are they doing that?
They're rewriting the AI output, putting it into their own voice, sometimes strategically adding typos or little grammatical errors to make it seem more human. Or they run the text through multiple different AI systems, kind of laundering it to make it look less, AI perfect. There's that quote about a student actually prompting the AI to write it as a college freshman who is a little dumb.
Slight chuckle, a little dumb. That's
Oh,
reverse engineering awkwardness.
pretty much. Students are getting, as the source says, really good at manipulating the systems, using layers of AI to bring that detection percentage down.
Okay, but all this effort, this cat and mouse game of detection and evasion, it raises a much deeper question, doesn't it? Beyond just cheating. What's actually happening to the learning part?
That's the core worry you hear loud and clear in these sources.
Yeah.
If students are leaning on AI this heavily, are they actually learning the fundamental stuff? Are they developing those skills?
Right.
Educators worry that students might come out of university, quote, essentially illiterate, lacking that foundational knowledge, that cultural context you get from actually grappling with the material yourself. There's a professor quoted, Troy Jollimore from Cal State Chico, expressing exactly this fear.
And this reliance, it's seen as kind of short-circuiting the important parts of learning, isn't it?
Exactly. When the AI handles the hard parts, the summarizing, the drafting, the coding logic, students miss out on the struggle, that wrestling with difficulty. That's where the real growth happens, right? Where deep understanding gets built.
Yeah, the productive struggle.
Precisely.
Yeah.
There's a real fear. This is just accelerating a kind of soft skills gap. Things like critical thinking, complex problem solving, creativity, they might atrophy. A UC Berkeley lecturer had this really blunt warning for his students. He basically said, you risk becoming nothing different than a human assistant to an artificial intelligence engine, and that makes you very easily replaceable.
Very easily replaceable. Oof, that's a stark way to put it. The potential outcome if you don't build those core skills yourself.
It is harsh, but it reflects the anxiety. And there's early research that seems to back up these concerns. Studies are starting to suggest that constantly offloading cognitive tasks to tools like chatbots could actually harm things like memory, problem-solving abilities, maybe even creativity over the long run.
Really? There's data on that already?
Emerging data, yeah. Several recent studies are linking increased AI use to a deterioration in critical thinking skills, especially noted in younger people. And one finding that really stood out to me from a Microsoft and Carnegie Mellon study, it found that a person's confidence in generative AI actually correlates with reduced critical thinking effort.
Wait, so the more you trust it?
The less you tend to think critically for yourself about the output.
Wow. That is genuinely concerning. It sort of flips the whole idea of using a tool to help you think better.
Right. It's almost the opposite effect, potentially.
Sure.
And this even connects to these broader, bigger picture worries about the reversal of the Flynn effect.
The Flynn effect. That's
No.
the long-term rise in average IQ scores, right?
Yeah, exactly. That trend went on for decades, but it started slowing down, maybe even reversing in some places, around 2006 or so. The worry now is whether these huge technological shifts, like ubiquitous AI, aren't just changing how we find information, but maybe impacting our baseline cognitive abilities as a society.
That paints a really challenging, maybe even slightly alarming picture of where things are and where they could be heading. And our sources, they really zoom in on one specific case, quite an extreme example that seems to embody a lot of these worries and kind of pushes them to their logical conclusion.
They really do.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the case of Chung and Roy Lee. He was a computer science major at Columbia University, and his story is, well, it's something else.
His story is quite a ride, from what the source says. By his own admission, he used generative AI to cheat on, what was it, nearly every assignment from day one.
Yeah, pretty much. He describes using it heavily, even for his intro programming classes. He'd basically just dump the prompt into ChatGPT and hand in whatever it spat out. That's his description.
Wow. And for essays?
For essays, he estimated AI wrote about 80% of the content. He just added, in his words, 20% of my humanity.
20% of his humanity, okay. And his reasoning for doing all this, it paints a really vivid picture of a certain kind of student mindset, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
He said he wasn't worried about his grades or academics because his view was most assignments in college are not relevant. He saw them as hackable by AI, and he just, quote, had no interest in doing them.
So what was his goal at Columbia then?
He states pretty clearly his main goal was networking, meeting a co-founder for a startup and meeting a wife. Not necessarily engaging deeply with the intellectually expansive curriculum, as the source puts it.
And did he find a co-founder?
He did. He teamed up with someone named Neil Shanmugam, and together they developed a tool called Interview Coder.
Interview Coder? What did that do?
It was explicitly designed to help people cheat on technical coding interviews. The website banner, according to the source, was just blunt. FCK leak code.
Chuckles. Okay, subtle.
Not subtle at all. And Roy even publicly demonstrated how well it worked by using it himself to cheat on an Amazon internship interview.
He cheated on an Amazon interview with his own cheating tool. And did he get the internship?
We got the offer.
Yeah.
He turned it down, but he got the offer.
Wow. That's audacious is one word for it. Unsurprisingly, I guess, this led to some disciplinary action from Columbia.
Right. Eventually, he was placed on disciplinary probation. The official reason was advertising a link to a cheating tool and providing students with the knowledge to access this tool.
Okay. And how did he take that? Was he remorseful?
His perspective is fascinating. He apparently found the punishment completely absurd. Especially, he argued, because Columbia itself has partnerships with places like OpenAI.
Huh. Interesting point.
He genuinely seems to believe that a world where using AI for homework isn't considered cheating, it's just around the corner. He said it's only years or months probably away.
Months, probably. Wow.
And he goes even further. He claims he doesn't know a single student at Columbia who isn't using AI to cheat in some capacity.
That claim alone is pretty striking. Whether it's true or not, just the fact he'd say it. And his story didn't just end with probation.
No, it escalated. He ended up getting suspended after he posted publicly about his disciplinary hearing online. But he seems to have landed on his feet, or at least moved on quickly. He's launched a new venture. It's called Cluely.
Cluely. Okay, what's the idea behind that one? Still in the same vein.
Even more integrated, it sounds like. Cluely is designed to scan your computer screen and listen to the audio around you, to provide real-time AI help without you even needing to type prompts. Its manifesto, quoted in the source, says, "We built Cluely so you never have to think alone again."
Never have to think alone again. That's quite the mission statement.
It really is. And his vision for where Cluely goes next is even more out there. He sees it eventually running on wearable devices.
Like glasses or something.
Yeah, seeing what you see, hearing what you hear, reacting to everything in your environment, and then his words, just in your brain.
Just in your brain. Wow.
His explicit plan, he states, is to target things like the digital LSATs, digital GREs, all campus assignments, quizzes, and tests. He says quite directly, it will enable you to cheat on pretty much everything.
So he's not just like pushing the boundaries. He seems to be actively trying to build the tools to completely dismantle them or bypass them entirely.
That seems to be the goal, yeah.
Okay. That's certainly one possible path forward. Or maybe sideways or downwards, depending on your perspective. But our sources don't just leave us with this feeling of, impending doom or total disruption, right? There's another angle.
No, thankfully, they offer another perspective. A really different way to frame this whole situation. What if, instead of just feeling despair or trying to fight this battle that feels kind of unwinnable, what if we saw this moment as a genuine opportunity?
You mean kind of flipping the script on it?
Exactly that. The second source we looked at makes a really strong case that trying to ban AI outright isn't just maybe undesirable, it's probably just not feasible. It's not going to work.
Right. The genie's out of the bottle.
Completely. As Sam Altman from OpenAI is quoted saying, the old-fashioned way of learning, quote, is not going to be the thing. So the argument shifts. It's not about trying to stop the wave. It's about learning to surf, as they put it.
Learning to surf. Okay, I like that metaphor. So how does this perspective suggest we avoid turning into those human assistants that the Berkeley lecturer warned about, the easily replaceable ones?
That's the crucial shift in thinking. Instead of students ending up as just assistants to the AI, easily swapped out. This view suggests we should teach them to be the contractors.
Contractors?
Yeah, like skilled individuals who use AI as a powerful tool. Think of it like advanced machinery to build their own houses of knowledge. The focus moves away from the tool doing the work for them and onto the student skillfully directing the tool.
Okay, that makes sense. It's about agency, control, direction, not just getting an output spat back at you. So what kinds of benefits does this AI fluency approach unlock? If it's used critically, of course.
Well, it's framed as using AI not for cheating, obviously, but for genuinely enhanced learning. The idea is that educators can actively guide students towards critical thinking about the AI's output, teaching them to question what the AI produces, to verify the information, cross-reference it, and most importantly, to add their own unique human voice, their perspective, their analysis. It's about valuing that essential human contribution. Maybe seeing Roy Lee's 20% of my humanity not as some tiny leftover, but as the absolutely crucial part that the student must develop and contribute.
So, redefining authenticity in a way, it's not about whether you used a tool, but how and what you built with it.
Precisely. AI becomes a starting point, maybe a collaborator or a research assistant, but not the final author, not the end product. The source mentions practical uses in this context too, like using AI to generate initial outlines like you might do anyway,
Sure.
or helping brainstorm ideas when you're stuck,
Right.
and potentially enabling really personalized learning pathways where AI could maybe identify specific knowledge gaps for a student or offer tailored practice exercises.
And presumably, learning to work with AI this way also prepares students better for the world outside university, because these tools aren't going away.
That's a huge part of the argument. If they only learn to be passive human assistants now, they will be easily replaceable later. But if they learn to be skilled users, critical thinkers, architects with AI tools, they're gaining a vital, necessary skill set for pretty much any future workplace.
So, this whole disruption, it becomes a catalyst, a chance to fundamentally rethink education itself.
Exactly. It's an opportunity, maybe even a necessity, to innovate,
Right.
to reinvent assignments so they can't just be done by AI, to reassess what genuine understanding actually looks like. Things like oral exams, maybe, or complex hands-on projects, creative tasks that require real human insight, or even physical presence. Those become more valuable.
So, the challenge AI presents actually forces a needed evolution in how we teach and how we assess learning.
It could, yeah. And crucially, this perspective really emphasizes the need for open dialogue. Educators need to be talking with their students about AI, understanding how they're already using it, acknowledging it's there, and then guiding them explicitly towards becoming fluent, responsible, and ethical AI users, not just
Right.
playing gotcha and trying to catch them using it.
Okay. So, where does all this leave us then? It feels like two very different paths emerging from the same technological shift.
It does. On one hand, you've got the undeniable scale of AI use already, the real challenges to academic integrity, and this deep worry that students are maybe short-circuiting their own learning, potentially losing critical skills along the way.
Right. And Roy Lee's story pushes that concern to its absolute extreme, envisioning a future where AI helps you bypass effort and thought on, well, pretty much everything, even
Yeah.
reportedly lying on a date.
Yeah, I was mentioning. And then on the other hand, you have this counter-argument. AI is here, it's an unstoppable force,
Hmm.
and fighting it is not only futile, but maybe counterproductive.
Hmm.
Instead, the path forward is to embrace this idea of AI fluency, to teach students how to be skilled architects, using these incredibly powerful tools critically, ethically, building their own knowledge, rather than just becoming cogs, assistants to the machine.
It really feels like we're at a fundamental turning point, a moment where we have to redefine what education is actually for, how we measure understanding, and which skills we decide are truly valuable for whatever future is coming.
Definitely feels that way.
And given Roy Lee's ultimate vision of AI eventually being just in your brain, seamlessly assisting you with everything, it leaves a pretty big question for you, the listener, to think about. As AI becomes ever more integrated into our lives, maybe moving beyond our screens to our glasses, our ears, maybe even closer, how does our fundamental relationship with knowledge itself, with the value we place on effort, and maybe even with our own internal thoughts, how does all that begin to fundamentally change?